My name is Emily, and I am 28 years old living in the middle of the bright lights and constant noise of Los Angeles, California. Most people think living in Los Angeles is like being in a movie every single day. But for me, it was just a lot of traffic and working long hours at a marketing firm that did not pay me nearly enough to afford my tiny apartment. I spent most of my time trying to build a life for myself while navigating the strange world of dating in a city where everyone is pretending to be someone they are not. I have always been a bit of a romantic, which is probably why I fell so hard for a man I thought was the answer to all my prayers. I met him at a crowded bar on a Friday night when the air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and cheap beer. He introduced himself as Julian, and he looked like he walked straight off a movie set. He was tall, with a thick beard that made him look rugged and mature, and he had a voice so deep it felt like it vibrated in my chest when he spoke. He told me he was 25 years old and that he was a successful entrepreneur who had just moved to the city from out of state. We spent that first night bar hopping all over the city, jumping from one rooftop lounge to another, and he paid for everything without even looking at the bill. He drove a luxury car that smelled like new leather, and he lived in an apartment building that had a doorman and a swimming pool on the roof. I thought I had finally found a man who was stable and ready for a real relationship. For 3 months, everything was perfect, or at least I thought it was. He was obsessed with me in a way that felt flattering at the time. He wanted to be with me every single day, and he showered me with attention and compliments. I let him into my home, and I let him into my life in a way I had never done with anyone else. I felt safe with him, which is the most embarrassing part of this whole story. I had no idea that every single word coming out of his mouth was a lie. The first sign that something was wrong happened when we decided to take a short trip out of town to a resort. We were at the check-in desk when the lady behind the counter asked for his identification card. Julian started acting very strange and nervous, fumbling through his wallet and claiming he must have left his identification card in the car. He looked pale, and his deep voice started to crack. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming he was just tired from the drive, but then things got weirder. Later that night, while he was in the shower, I saw his wallet sitting on the nightstand. I know it was wrong to look, but my gut was telling me something was off. I opened it and found a driver's license that had his picture on it but a completely different name. His name wasn't Julian at all. His name was actually Mateo. And the birth date on the card didn't say he was 25 years old. It said he was only 19. I sat on the edge of the bed feeling like the floor had been pulled out from under me. 19 years old, he was a teenager. I was almost 30, and I had been dating a teenager who had lied about his entire existence. I kept digging through his bag while the water was still running, and I found a wedding ring tucked into a small pocket. He wasn't just a 19-year-old liar. He was a married 19-year-old liar. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I found more documents that showed he was actually an undocumented immigrant, and he had a federal warrant out for his arrest for some kind of financial fraud. It was like I was living in a horror movie where the person I loved was actually a complete stranger with a dangerous secret. When he came out of the shower, I confronted him with the truth. Instead of being sorry, he became cold and scary. He told me that it didn't matter who he was because he loved me and he wasn't going to let me leave him. I managed to get away that night, and I went back to Los Angeles, but that was just the beginning of the nightmare. He started harassing me constantly. He would call me from different numbers and show up at my apartment at all hours of the night. I found out he had stolen jewelry and a laptop from my home while I was at work. He knew where I lived and he knew my routine, and I felt completely violated. I couldn't call the police because I was afraid of what he might do if he got desperate, and I also felt a strange sense of guilt for being so easily fooled. I felt like I was losing my mind. I couldn't sleep, and I was always looking over my shoulder. I was having what felt like a psychotic episode because I was so angry and so scared at the same time. I wanted him to feel the same level of fear and violation that he had put me through. I knew he had an active warrant, which meant he was terrified of the authorities, but I didn't want to just call the police and wait for them to maybe do something. I wanted to take matters into my own hands. I wanted to destroy the life he had built on lies. One night, I drove over to his luxury apartment building. I had a heavy brick in my hand, and my heart was racing with pure adrenaline. I managed to get past the security by following a delivery driver inside. I went to his floor and stood outside his door for a long time. I knew he wasn't home because I had seen his car at a bar down the street. I took that brick and I threw it right through the glass window next to his front door. The sound of the glass shattering was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard. I reached through the broken glass and unlocked the door from the inside. Once I was in his apartment, I went into a complete frenzy. I didn't just want to steal his things, I wanted to ruin them. I ransacked the entire place, throwing his expensive clothes on the floor and pouring bleach over them. I smashed his television and tipped over his furniture. Then I went into the kitchen and grabbed his microwave. I carried it into the bathroom and placed it right in the middle of the bathtub. I took a piece of paper and a thick black marker and wrote a note that said, "Why don't you take a shower?" And I taped it right to the front of the microwave. It was a crazy and dangerous thing to do, but in that moment, I felt like I was finally taking my power back. I left his apartment looking like a disaster zone and drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. But even after that, I didn't feel like it was enough. He was still out there, and he was still going to try to bother me. I needed a way to make him so miserable that he would have no choice but to leave the city. That is when I came up with the plan for the dating application. I knew that he was terrified of people finding out where he lived because of his legal status and his warrant. I decided to use his own face and his real information against him. I downloaded the dating application called Grindr, which is specifically for men looking for other men. I used his real photos, the ones where he looked older and handsome with his full beard. I created a profile for him, and I started talking to dozens of men. I specifically looked for men who were into really intense and strange role-play scenarios. I told them that I was a submissive man who wanted to be surprised at home. I gave them his exact address and told them that they should show up without warning and try to be as aggressive as possible. I told one man in particular that I wanted a robbery roleplay. I told him that he should come to the door, banging as loud as he could, and try to barge his way inside while yelling. I told him that I might act scared, but that it was all part of the act and he should keep going no matter what. It was a very dark and cruel thing to do, but I was so consumed by my own rage that I didn't care about the consequences. The only problem was that I lived about 20 minutes away from his apartment. The dating application uses a global positioning system to show how far away you are from the person you are talking to. The men on the application kept notice that my location did not match the address I was giving them. They were suspicious and thought I was a scammer. I had to use every bit of my marketing and persuasion skills to convince them that I was just using a virtual private network for privacy reasons because I was a high-profile person. Eventually, I convinced 3 different men to go to his apartment that night. I sat in my car a few blocks away from his building and watched. I saw a large man in a leather jacket walk up to the entrance. A few minutes later, I saw another man arrive. Then came the man I had talked to about the robbery roleplay. I can only imagine what it was like for my ex-boyfriend to have 3 strange men show up at his door, one of them trying to break in and yelling about a robbery. He couldn't call the police because he had a federal warrant for his arrest, and he was an undocumented immigrant. If the police showed up, he would be the one going to jail, regardless of what the other men were doing. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making, and I was the one pulling the strings. I watched from the shadows as the lights in his apartment flickered on and off, and I could hear muffled shouting from the street. I felt a cold sense of justice. He had invaded my life and my home, and now his home was no longer a safe place for him. He was being harassed by people he didn't know, just like he had harassed me. The next day, I found out through a mutual acquaintance that he was absolutely terrified. He thought that some gang or some group of people was out to get him. He didn't know it was me. He was so paranoid that he packed up whatever he had left and decided to flee the city. He thought that if he could just get back across the border to Mexico, he would be safe from whatever was happening to him. But his luck had finally run out. Because he had a federal warrant, his name and information were in the national database. When he tried to cross the border, the Customs and Border Protection officers flagged him immediately. He was taken into custody right there at the border. I heard later that he was sent to a federal prison to serve time for his fraud warrants before he was eventually deported back to his home country. I haven't seen or heard from him since that day. He disappeared from my life as quickly as he had entered it, leaving behind nothing but a trail of lies and broken glass. For a long time after everything happened, I felt a sense of victory. I had won. I had got my revenge and I had protected myself from a man who was dangerous and predatory. But as the months went by, the guilt started to set in. I realized that what I did was incredibly dangerous. I put those men from the dating application in a very risky situation. They could have been hurt or arrested because of my lies. I had become a liar just like he was. I had used my anger to justify doing something that was arguably just as crazy as anything he had done to me. I still have the screenshots of the conversations on my phone, and I have a photo that one of the men sent me of him standing at the door. I look at them sometimes, and I don't recognize the person who did those things. I was 28 years old, and I was acting like I was in some kind of twisted movie. I told one friend about what I did, and she didn't even believe me until I showed her the messages. She looked at me with a mix of horror and respect, which is a very strange feeling. I am writing this now because it is eating me alive. I want to believe that I am a good person who was just pushed to the edge, but I also know that what I did was wrong. Los Angeles is a city that can make you feel like you are invisible, and sometimes when you feel invisible, you do things to make sure the world knows you are there. I took it too far, and I know that. I am living my life now in a new apartment with a much better security system. I don't go to bars as much as I used to, and I am much more careful about who I let into my home. I check people's backgrounds, and I ask a lot of questions. I have changed because of what happened, and not all of those changes are good. I am more suspicious and more cynical. I wonder if Mateo, or Julian, or whatever his name really was, ever thinks about me. I wonder if he knows it was me who sent those men to his door. I wonder if he is sitting in a cell somewhere thinking about the 28-year-old woman in Los Angeles who destroyed his life just as easily as he tried to destroy hers. Sometimes I think about the microwave in the bathtub and I want to laugh, but then I remember the sound of the glass breaking and I just feel cold. I don't know if there is a moral to this story other than to be careful who you trust. In a city like Los Angeles, everyone is playing a character, and sometimes you don't realize you are in a tragedy until the final act. I am trying to move on and be the person I was before I met him, but I think that version of Emily is gone forever. I am someone who knows exactly what she is capable of when she is backed into a corner, and that is a very heavy thing to carry. I am just a woman trying to find her way back to some kind of normal life, while the ghosts of my past follow me through the palm trees and the smog. I hope that by getting this off my chest, I can finally start to forgive myself for being just as crazy as the man who lied to me. I hope that wherever he is, he has learned that you cannot just take things from people without there being a price to pay. I paid my price in guilt, and he paid his in freedom. It feels like a fair trade, but it doesn't make me feel any better when I'm lying awake at night listening to the sounds of the city outside my window. The streets of Los Angeles are full of stories like mine, stories of people who came here looking for a dream and ended up in a nightmare. I am just one of the lucky ones who made it out the other side, even if I had to break a few windows and send a few strange messages to get there. I don't think I will ever use a dating application again as long as I live. The risk is just too high, and the people behind the screens are too mysterious. I would rather be alone in this big, noisy city than be with someone who isn't who they say they are. I have learned my lesson the hard way, and I have the scars to prove it. I just want to be Emily again, the girl who believed in romance and didn't know how to throw a brick through a window, but I don't think that girl exists anymore. She was replaced by someone stronger, meaner, and much more dangerous. And maybe in a city like Los Angeles, that is exactly who I need to be to survive. I keep thinking about the moment I wrote that note on the microwave. I remember the smell of the bleach and the way my heart was thumping in my ears. It was like I was outside of my own body, watching a stranger commit a crime. But it wasn't a stranger. It was me. I was the one who decided that enough was enough. I was the one who chose to fight back with everything I had. I don't know if I should be proud of that or ashamed. Most people would probably say I should be ashamed, but they haven't lived through what I lived through. They haven't had a 19-year-old boy steal their grandmother's ring and tell them he was a 25-year-old man who loved them. They haven't had to look over their shoulder every time they walk to their car. They haven't felt the sheer terror of knowing someone is watching your every move. When you are that scared, you do things you never thought you were capable of doing. You become a version of yourself that is unrecognizable. I am still trying to find the pieces of the old me and put them back together, but some of them are missing. They were left behind in that ransacked apartment and at the border where Mateo was finally caught. I am moving forward one day at a time, trying to be better, trying to be kinder, but always remembering that I have a fire inside me that can burn everything down if it needs to. I think that is the real revenge. Not that he went to prison or got deported, but that I survived him and became someone he could never control. I am free of him now, and that is all that matters. The guilt will fade eventually, I hope, but the memory of my own strength will stay with me forever. I am Emily, I am 28 years old, and I am no longer a victim. I am the one who won. And even if the win was messy and dark, it was still a win. The sun still rises over the Hollywood sign every morning, and the traffic still crawls along the freeway, and I am still here, breathing and living my life on my own terms. That has to be enough. I often wonder if the men from the dating application ever think about that night. Do they tell their friends about the crazy robbery roleplay that turned out to be a real-life drama? Do they feel used, or do they just see it as another weird Lowe's Angels story? I feel bad for involving them, truly I do. They were just looking for a connection or an adventure, and I turned them into weapons. It was a selfish thing to do. But in the heat of my anger, I couldn't see anything but my own need for justice. I was like a person caught in a storm, just trying to find anything to hold on to so I wouldn't be swept away. Now that the storm has passed, I can see the wreckage I left behind. I am trying to be more mindful of how my actions affect others, even when I am hurting. It is a hard lesson to learn, but it is an important one. I have started going to a therapist to talk about everything that happened. It helps to say it out loud to someone who isn't going to judge me. She tells me that trauma can make us do strange things and that I need to be patient with myself. I am trying. I am trying to forgive the 28-year-old girl who threw a brick because she didn't know what else to do. I am trying to forgive the girl who used an application to send strangers to a man's house because she was afraid for her life. It is a long process, but I think I am making progress. I haven't looked at the Grindr screenshots in over a month. I think I might delete them soon. They are like a weight around my neck, reminding me of a time when I was someone I didn't like. I want to be someone I can be proud of again. I want to look in the mirror and see a woman who is brave and honest and kind. I know I have it in me to be that person. I just have to keep moving forward. Lowe's Angels is a city of second chances, or at least that is what people say. I am taking my second chance and I am making the most of it. I have a new job now, one that pays a little better and doesn't make me feel so drained. I have a small garden on my balcony where I grow tomatoes and herbs. It is a quiet, simple life, and it is exactly what I need. I don't need the luxury apartments or the expensive cars or the men with deep voices and big secrets. I just need peace and quiet and the knowledge that I am safe. I still think about Mateo sometimes, but it's not with anger anymore. It's more like a distant memory of a bad dream. I hope he is doing okay wherever he is, but I also hope he never comes back to the city. This city has enough liars as it is. We don't need one more. I am finishing this story now because I feel like I have finally said everything I needed to say. It is out in the world, and it is no longer just mine to carry. I can let it go. I can breathe. I am Emily from Lowe's Angels, and I am going to be okay. The revenge was sweet for a moment, but the peace is much better. I have learned that the best way to get back at someone who tried to ruin your life is to live a good life despite them. That is exactly what I am doing. I am living, I am growing, and I am finally happy. And that is the best revenge of all. I hope that anyone who reads this or hears this understands that while revenge might feel good in the moment, it is the healing that really matters. Don't let the people who hurt you turn you into someone you are not. Stay true to yourself, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I am proof that you can come back from the edge and find yourself again. It takes time and it takes work, but it is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. It means a lot to me to be able to share it. I am moving on now into the bright California sun, and I am not looking back. Not even for a second. The road ahead is long, but I am ready for it. I am stronger than I was before, and I am wiser too. And that is a gift that no one can take away from me. Not even a 19-year-old boy with a fake identification card and a heart full of lies. I am the hero of my own story now, and I think I like the way it ends. It doesn't end with a brick or a microwave or a dating application. It ends with a woman sitting on her balcony, watching the sunset, and knowing that she is finally, truly free.